Good evening, one and all. Wait a minute. There we go. I forgot to make a change here. Alright, so we got this one. Going to... where's this one right here? Yeah, from scene to there. Do we need to duplicate something? Stand by. 2. Just a second. Stop it. All right. Okay, that should already be set up. Program drawing. There we go. All right. Just a second, want to test something. There we go. Okay. Transitions were broken. So, because I ended up altering the way that I have this set up. Anyway. Good evening, one and all. Tonight, we're going to be drawing some scenes from a very spooky moment in my life. Yes, we're preparing some drawings for the stream that we're going to be on tomorrow. So, I was asked to participate in the stream after the weekend. That is going to be taking place tomorrow. As such, I promised them some artwork for that as I told the story. Drawing tonight. There we go. Anyway, I finished the artwork, but now I needed to scan it in so I could be able to alter it. Add some shading, maybe, a little bit of color. I'm not sure. Most of it's just cleaning it up. I'm trying to learn the process because I've got some bigger projects that I want to be able to use this technique for. And then if we have any extra time, I'm going to be doing some other 2D art. I'll reveal that later on. It's kind of a little side thing that has absolutely no relevance to any project that I'm currently doing, but it has relevance to something in the future. Anyway, let us start off with this drawing here. Okay, so how do I set this up? There's not a crop tool, is there? Let me search for this. Oh, wait a minute. think that might be it. Okay. Uh, yep, that is indeed what it is. All right. So I got to come over here. Rectangle. And crop. Dandy. This is the first time that I've done this, actually. Well, not the first time, but the first time I've done this as an adult. I think the last time I did this was when I was a teenager. So technically, I guess an adult, but not according to many people's standards. Let's change the contrast on that. Let's see, I want let's make this non-destructive. Something is lost there. That's better. This is a scene that I'm going to be telling people about tomorrow. It's kind of it's interesting to have to put a memory down on paper. I won't go through the story again tonight, but it is something where you can tune in tomorrow to be able to hear about that. I wonder if I want to color this at all. I may not go this route. Just doing this for right now. Experimenting. I don't want to color the whole thing. That would take too much time, and there's 4 images to do of this, so that wouldn't really be necessary. But it might be interesting to have it for parts of the background. Then if we tone it back, oh, that could actually work out. We'll do it for now this way and then maybe change things up later on. Now, if you're a regular around here, you probably know that this is not what we typically do on Fridays. I've tried to do games on Fridays typically, although as of this year, I've been trying to change that up and make games less of a prominent aspect of the things I do, which is honestly the way that I would prefer it to be. I can be I can have moments of being entertaining when gaming, but to be completely honest, I know that I kind of have worn out some of my creativity with that. And this gives me the opportunity to explore other types of creativity by doing art, animation, storytelling, and so forth. But if people were to want to see more of the gaming stuff, it is something where it still happens. And if you want to see that, that happens on the Alaska Man Jeff channel. This is primarily the art side. So we have two channels, Castercraft and then Alaska Man Jeff. And technically there's another one that I want to try and get back up and running. But right now there hasn't really been anyone interested in wanting to hear more about it, so I kind of shut it down for the time being. I do want to bring it back though, because I think it'd be useful. And that is our the Bible study channel. Now, not everyone's going to be interested in that, and I completely understand, although it is something where I do believe it is an important thing that I want to try and bring back. Not because I want to try and be an arbiter of I don't want to be the sole source of truth. I don't want to be the one who pretends to know it all. I just want to be someone who passes on the things that I have learned throughout life. And the reason why I had to say that other part is because I've seen other people abuse that sort of concept many times over. I don't want to fall into that same trap. Greetings there, Bastion. How you doing? Right now, I looked at the Fortnite update, and it is massive. So I can't do that tonight, but we're going to be trying to pull that off tomorrow. So I'm going to let it update this evening. 18 gigabytes. That's a bit more than the last one that we had. So the stream that will be taking place tomorrow, um, I'll be sharing a link with that in a little while. But people can be able to find it also on the X account that I have. Um, I don't share a whole lot of things to my Instagram. I know that some people are like really big into that. I don't, because I actually have a lot of people that I'm old friends with. I don't want to bombard them with my streaming life. Mostly because I've known people who do that, and it really does grate on you. And I don't want to have to be remembered as the guy that they used to know and then suddenly decided to turn it into the business account. And that's one of the reasons why there's a separation of the streaming from my Instagram, but also a separation of the art and whatnot from that stuff as well. That one's going to be business related, and so that's why it is kept on a separate account, which is fairly small right now, but it will grow in the future, and it's a slow growth, but it is something where I'm going to be putting the effort to try and make that work over there a little bit differently than how I treat it on like the X account. But that being said, I'm not a fan of X either. I've had a lot of big issues with X over the last couple of years. And one of the things that I've done is I have now my own website that I'm going to be treating as my own social media as well. Sure, that is not going to be good for trying to get traffic and whatnot. That is actually one of the worst ideas that you can do, as far as I have seen over my very short time of being online. But for the time being, it seems like the only option. So I'm going to be trying to link things to there so as to not be a bother to people, and also to avoid some of the nonsense that can take place on those platforms. The worst one was Facebook. Now, Facebook, I actually had people legitimately try and cancel me. I also had people that tried to cause grief on X before. Thankfully, not nearly as bad, and it kind of blew over fairly quickly. But it is something where I do realize that stuff is to be considered. There's a couple of streams that I've been a part of in the past. In fact, there's some big streams I've been a part of. Ones where there were actually thousands of people, legitimately, not like the bot sort of situation that I've been in the past. But you know what is really weird is that in the past when I did do those, there was this gut feeling like something was off. And during those ones, the big ones, I could tell that they weren't going to last. I didn't really know how it wasn't actually going to pan out at all. But it was interesting to see that transition take place. I was there. I was at the top of the game, so to speak. I had potential, and it all came crashing down. Now, I wanted to bring that up because there's actually a couple of streams that I have seen over the last couple of years where they don't have any sort of potential. They're trying to be like the big streams, but they're starting to learn over time that it doesn't actually work. And slowly but surely, they're starting to get out. So thus, a lot of the streams that I was familiar with or had connections with in one way, shape, or form ended up disappearing over time. And so thus I never got a chance to go back to some of those streams. After the Weekend's one of the only ones that I actually have active engagement with, and they're from the past. They're one of the very few guys few groups that I actually have any sort of rapport with, and positive rapport at that as well. Of course, there is the stuff I have done with Erudai, but I've never been on their streams, which is kind of interesting. I've done this much and I've not been on one, but that's because it's a completely different audience, a different set of criteria, and I just don't quite meet that, which is completely understandable. But it is interesting to look back at the number of streams per week that I was being invited to back in the day. We were talking about a stream once every 2 to 3 days that I would be invited to join. That now is one stream every 5 to 6 months, for the most part, which is perfectly fine. But it is interesting to see the decline. And I've come to accept that. I'm like, hey, I understand how this business works. I understand how people work. I understand how this whole sort of online streaming culture is about clicks or engagement, or about trying to cover certain sort of material or certain sort of perspectives. So there's never the need to be shilling to try and say, oh, please let me onto your stream. There's no need for that. And having been on the bigger streams, there's not the urgency to want to try and do that either. So I wanted to bring that up because there's a couple of streamers out there that are trying their best to make it big. And they keep talking a big game. Like, oh, when I finally get there, I'm planning to do this and that. And then I realized, well, dang, I'm kind of doing the same sort of thing with Castercraft. Understandably so, that they are going to want to have that sort of mentality. But there was a perspective that I heard earlier that really got at me. One that actually aggravates me quite a bit. What prompts you to stream? What is the need? What is the desire for this? What good are you doing? And someone might respond with, good? What sort of good am I supposed to be doing? Supposed to, have fun with it. Well, yeah. But why would I care about having fun at one stream and not the other? Why do I need your stream and not someone else's? You need to contribute something to stand out. I'm not saying that every channel needs to have that, but if you really want to go somewhere, you have to contribute something. And some people, over time, they start getting bitter. They're like, but I'm trying, I'm doing everything I can, I'm having fun with it. I want to be able to make a living doing what I love. You love playing games. And you think that somehow you're going to make a streaming empire off of that? Those days are gone. No one is going to be able to do that now, except a very, very small amount. I'll contribute knock-knock jokes. Hey, now that can be good. People love comedians. They really do. If you had, like, honestly, and this goes for anybody out there, if you did comedy during your streams, immediately you would become a go-to for those people. People would love the streams because people love to laugh. And here I am, telling sober stories throughout my streams. I'm not one of those people. I can tell jokes, I can get pretty funny at times, but I'm not naturally a jokester. I can pretend to be a jokester, but I'm not a good one. And I do realize that. As such, I kind of leave that to other people. But if people really wanted to make a good channel, humor is going to be like a really good option for you. Something else that is possible is that people that are streaming are contributing opportunities for engagement. Daramuth is one of those people. Now, we've had him around a couple of times. He has popped in during his Pay It Forward streams, and I've gone over to visit his stream many times and got to actually be on his stream on the occasion. He's contributing very much as well. He's doing engagement. People want engagement, so thus his channel is naturally going to have a very good chance of success. But if you're trying to gain and think that you're going to make a living doing that, well, you're going to be sadly mistaken, because over time it will become more and more apparent that that is impossible. And I do mean impossible. I'm not joking when I say that. Because, or being like, exaggerating. You will not be able to make a living doing that. And it's going to get worse. Because if you had someone come up to you and say, hey, you know what? I have been playing solitaire, and I want you to give me money for playing solitaire. And you say, why? You're doing it by yourself. You're over there in the corner every day playing solitaire. Why would I give you money? Oh, well, you have to pay me for doing what I love. Do I? Nah. Nope, not doing that. That is what it sounds like. Playing a game is a childish endeavor. You can do it and have fun with it, but don't expect to make a living off of it. Do what you love is not playing games that are trivial. It's contributing something that matters to the society. And if you love that, then hey, that's great. But most of us are not going to be able to do that. I love doing artwork. I don't get paid doing just random artwork. I have to be paid to do artwork that other people want. The stuff I really, really want to do, I don't get paid doing. I get paid to make artwork and videos and websites for people that have a very different set of values than me, a very different set of goals. And because I can work for them, I have the chance to do the stuff that I really enjoy. That is what you have to try and do in life. But there's some people that are certain that they somehow deserve to live really fancy, really sophisticated lives, getting there. And I know there's a lot of people that do this, but it is corny. They do DoorDash so they can keep gaming throughout the day. Like, oh, well, I need to do this because I'm streaming. DoorDash is the favorite tool of so many streamers, but it's not good. In fact, it's very, very bad. Because it is creating people that are slothful. People that don't have goals. People that don't have dreams or visions or energy to really pursue anything of value. It's important for us to realize that we have a very short amount of time on this earth. You can have fun. There is nothing that says you can't have fun in this life. But there is such a thing as not realizing the difference of things that are trivial versus important. Things that are trivial eventually must fade. And now I'm guilty of this. There's a lot of things I pursue that are trivial. A lot of stuff that I think, though, that are not trivial, that other people think are. And it's up to me to try and prove them wrong. But it's not for me to try and throw everything away in the pursuit of that. What I'm doing right here is, you could say, trivial. You could also say it actually has a great purpose. Who's to say? Well, one way that you can know whether or not it's right or wrong is, are you broke? Are you a burden on somebody else? The people that are trying to stream games constantly, they fall into that category of burdensome. This does not go for everybody that is in the gaming category, but man, are there a lot of them. There's a whole lot of them. There's a person that I saw who was spending a lot of money getting fancy equipment for his streams, and he had no personality. And I don't say that maliciously. It actually was kind of sad to see. He didn't have anything of value to share with others. He was doing it just because he was having fun. But he also wanted it to be his business, which starts to become a little weird when you think about it. He was so desperate for attention, and he did all the right things. He bought the right equipment. He shilled to the right people, trying to get things all up and running. But it never materialized. And recently, and this is why I won't mention who this person is, because just in case, they recently have started lashing out at others. And their rhetoric is getting more and more insulting. It's a shame, because we all can have our dreams, but we should not be so taken with our dreams that we start hurting others in the pursuit of that dream. What good is me lashing out someone else because my dream is not coming about if that means that I have to compromise values and tear another down? What good is there in me getting frustrated and turning on somebody? That's not going to make things better. If anything, it's going to make things way, way worse. But there are people in this world that do that. And some people that want to be seen as valuable members of the streaming communities, and they desperately start to throw shade and hate at others because they start to think everyone else is the reason why they're failing. When in the end, they were failing because they were being trivial. Not everyone's going to be able to make a living being trivial. In fact, I dare say most people don't. But even if you did get the chance to be trivial with your living, and you got to make a wage off of being trivial, like so many game streamers over the last decade have been able to do, is that what you want to be remembered as? Is that the sort of person you want folks to look back on and say, yes, look at what this person did. They changed the world. They streamed a video game, wasting their life away, when other people were sacrificing of themselves, were raising a family, were traveling the world, being a construction worker, or something as simple as being a friend to the person next door. What is more meaningful? If you can answer that, if you can answer why your streaming is meaningful, then I got no problem if you're trying to succeed and make a living off of it. Now, I kind of question if it's possible these days, but I'm not going to condemn you for it. The moment I start getting frustrated with it and will offer condemnation for it is when it starts becoming hostile. And yes, there are a lot of people in this world that are becoming hostile over this because they feel the streaming world is breaking. And it is breaking. It is on its last legs. So thus, many people are going to other platforms to try and save their streaming career. It's only a matter of time till people realize it's not working. The people on top will remain on top. Anybody else trying to get in is going to fail. Again, it's not a malicious statement. It's stating what is true. People are going to learn that they don't matter. And in their bitterness, they're going to blame everything else other than realize that they just weren't contributing something of value. If they could solve that part, they'd be golden. So you want to stream a game? Wonderful. Do something else at the same time and prove that it's going to make a difference, that it's going to matter. So if I start climbing the ladder, there will be people that will try and knock me off? Imagine that. The answer is yes. Absolutely. They will try and knock you off. You know, there's a guy that I got to see when I was part of the YouTubers circle. And he was on the climb. He was starting to go up and up. I won't mention who it is because that would tell too much. I will tell it off stream though, for those who want to know. There was a guy, he was starting to really succeed. And there was another guy who was getting very worried about it because he was the guy on top. And he saw the guy climbing up. He's like, hey, it was fine when he was down here. But now he's up here. He's very close to me. So we started trying to do things behind the scenes to tear him down. What was ironic is that the guy that was on trying to get up, he knew that game, and so he started trying to take the other guy down. But neither one of them knew how much the other despised each other. That process repeats itself over and over again. But the biggest thing is just that people don't have a dream. They don't have a vision, a reason to do what they're doing. People have to be able to prove that. And that goes for anyone out there. If you want to be a streamer, find a reason to do it. Not just for the fun of it. The fun of it will fade fast. Anything that you love to do is going to become boring or even painful for you to do. There's a guy that I know, he was streaming games constantly. And then after 2 years of doing it constantly, he said, this feels like work. And he was angry about it. Welcome to the club, buddy. Everybody else in the world has to work. You're not going to be able to avoid it. But here's where it's important to remember. It's important to remember this. If you can do, let me put it this way. If you can do a stream, actually, wait a minute, I don't want to go into that area just yet. It's a bit deep. I mean, we're already in the deep section. We'll hold off on that one. I'll do it for the fans. Indeed. So what I will tell you about the guy that I started the story with. He wanted to stream games and it started feeling like work. Part of his anger is that he realized the number of people that were watching couldn't even pay for a single meal a day. At first it was like, oh, I'll just hold off. I'll just keep streaming and then eventually I'll make it big. And that day never came. So he started to shill to other channels, trying to get noticed. He went from having about 24 viewers a day to one himself. His streams keep going to this day. I pop in every now and again to see how he's doing. Boom. He's going down fast. He already hit rock bottom, and he's not pulling out. I talk about this stuff on a regular basis, as people know, because I don't like the lies that are being spread around the streaming community, because I see new ones popping up all over the place. I'm going to do this and be different. It's all the same old stuff. So if someone has a streaming idea, where does the money come from? This is something I was talking with a streamer a couple years back. He was trying to make it big, and he thought for certain he had found the winning combination. And for him, it was the idea that he was going to do things that were like super entertaining. He was going to choose really trendy games. He was going to do all these strategies that other people had done. What was interesting is that all his strategies that he didn't pan out. He was trying for weeks to trying to make it work. And months passed, and he was still trying it, still failing. I don't say this stuff because I'm trying to be cruel and heartless about it and say, oh yeah, you try this, you're going to fail. And I failed, and I wasn't even trying. I was doing this because I was trying to learn the streaming world. I failed if I was trying to make it a business. It's a warning sign from somebody who has seen the inside of the industry and the upper echelons of the industry as well. I did not see the bottom layer only. I got to see the inner workings of one of the larger channel structures, and got to meet many people from other aspects of that same sort of structure. People that had been in the industry for years and years. They were successful, and even they were starting to realize that they were going to have to get out because it was all starting to fall apart. So the streamer that I go in and visit every now and again that's starting to lash out at everybody, he may want desperately to have the streaming stuff work. And there's a lot of people, especially with health concerns, that really want streaming to work. Now, I'm not trying to be harsh to the people that have health concerns, because those people, they're trying to find something that works. But here's the reality. It's not going to work. They can try their darndest to make streaming work, but it's not going to. But there is a way to make it work. It's just not the way that everyone else is trying to do. The best way to get the streaming world to actually be possible is to offer something of merit. That's why I said, what is the goal besides gaming? Because anyone can game. Why would I watch one person versus another? That's one of the reasons why I tell so many stories and try and focus on deep thoughts, because that's the one thing I know I can do no matter what it is that I'm doing. If I just came on here every single time and said, "Hey guys, you know it's really stupid, pineapple on pizza." Do you know how dull that gets after a while? Oh, sure, there are some communities that they just laugh every time that happens. But what is it that you're actually doing of merit? Are you doing something that matters? You may think that, oh yeah, I could do it. I could be able to do the trivial stuff. Sure. For a little while, you can do that. But in the end, eventually, you start getting worried. And not just a little worried. We're talking full-blown panic for people. When suddenly they wake up one day, they look in the mirror and they're old. And they say, what have I done with my life? Sure, it doesn't feel like it when you're young. I'm technically in the age where that shouldn't matter. I should be focused on having fun out there and going out and exploring all sorts of things and getting to go on this trip or that trip. That's what people in our age are supposed to want. We don't have the realization that a lot of us are going to reach old age and we're going to start to panic because we suddenly realize we're alone. And we have no merit outside of a few trivial gimmicks that we did. And when that finally sinks in, that's when the panic attacks begin. Some people call it a midlife crisis, and a lot of people try and solve it by going out and buying every fancy thing that they can find. Other people go out and they find other ways to try and do that. I had my midlife crisis about 6 years ago. Full-blown panic attacks. I never saw it coming. It was, I was discouraged, but I wasn't prepared for the shell shock that I would have. And it lasted for several months. During that time, I started exploring a lot of different things, desperate to try and find something to try and reset my mindset. One of the things that I did is I reached out to all sorts of people to try and volunteer for stuff, just desperate to do something to break the routine. I joined the Lego project, and it helped out. There's a reason why I was their hardest working individual, because I was in desperation to try and do something that mattered. And I couldn't find anything. It was a pandemic. Some time had passed. I started off by doing language learning, and then I went on to the volunteer work. But it was a time span that lasted a long time. And you could say it never really ended. But in other ways, it did. See, I don't have those panic attacks anymore. But I do have the realization that I have a very short time on this earth. We all do. A panic attack for midlife crisis really begins with the realization that you are not immortal. And you have a very short amount of time on this earth. And that's not bad. Sure, it can feel bad when you suddenly realize that it's not guaranteed that you're going to get to fulfill even half the dreams that you have. But it's not terrible. But it can be terrible if you don't take heed of the kind of the lessons that you should be taken away from it. And one of the lessons that I took away from it was wasting time being trivial. And I learned through a couple of painful ways just how trivialness was in everything I was doing. You know, one of the big reasons why I stream is because it helps me to realize that there is more than isolation. There's more than doing self-absorbed projects. There's a need for reaching out and trying to be someone to encourage one another. That's what the streaming world has taught me. And I've learned that in a couple of different ways. But one of the most important aspects of the streaming world for me is that I've come across many people that have had similar sort of situations. And they're having to deal with their own panics, of which is one of the streamers. Now, he won't say necessarily that it is panic attacks he's been having, but it is interesting to see his behavior and compare it to myself and see that he's around the right age. So, some people will stream and have that sort of mentality like, oh, I need to do something. I'm having these panic attacks. Of which the guy that I come across every now and again is in that, like I said, in that category. He's not making his situation any better, though. Whereas my situation has gotten better. And I was trying to figure out why. Why did my situation get better, but other people that I know seem to be going downhill? And a lot of it comes down to a sense of purpose. My purpose is getting a chance to share the things that I've experienced through life, whether it's wisdom that's been passed on to me, life experiences that I've had, or techniques that I've learned. Those are the things that drive me. It's one of the things that I try and put into my stories, which, again, are going to be coming out this month. So, that's what drives me. But if you go online and say, I'm going to play a game that everybody else is playing and that's going to give me drive, well, don't be surprised when it isn't fulfilling. It's not like I'm not trying to be cruel to people like that, but I'm trying to be a wake-up call and say, hey, I've been down that path. I've seen what happens to people in that category, and it doesn't end well. really, really doesn't end well for some. Some people, it makes them borderline insane. And I met one of those people. He was having real panic attacks, to the point where he would sometimes close down the stream halfway. And he would immediately pull out weed, which I hate weed. Weed is destructive to people. Way destructive. And I will challenge anybody on that. But he would indulge himself in weed and alcohol. Alcohol is another one that I have big issues with. Only when it's abused, though. He would then get distraught, all in isolation. And the whole time, no one was there to offer him help. No one knew. They didn't know he was in sheer panic mode. So if you ever come across a streamer that is like, hey, I got this great idea for a channel. I'm going to do this because I want to be able to have fun. Watch out for them. Help them when it doesn't pan out. Be there for them, because it will hit hard and it will hit fast. And they will not feel like they have a way out. So being a friend to them during those times is crucial. All right, that image is done. Let's save that. Oh, no, don't do that. Save as. All right, so art. There we go. All right. So if gaming is such a such a dead-end industry, why do so many people do it? What is it that makes them successful? Because there are countless people, well, not countless, you can count them on two hands. There are many people that make a living doing that stuff. So how is it that they make a living and the average person can't? It's personality. That's one of the reasons why I know I will never be able to make it as a big-time streamer. I don't have the personality for it. It's a very narrow group of people that can do that. And I know for a fact that I cannot. But neither can the average person. I did 13 frames per second of streaming. Surprised my laptop didn't explode. Boom. That's a very real concern, actually. There's a lot of people that have issues with their devices not being able to keep up with them. Don't destroy it. You know, it's one of the reasons why I didn't do why I pulled back on the movie reviews. While I really, really enjoyed doing them, it was just 1 out of 1,000 people that were doing the same thing. I wasn't contributing anything new and different. I can't remember if I have a star brush. I'm pretty sure I have a star brush somewhere. It should be in scenery, so let me see here. No, I don't. Oh. Well, let me see if I can find one. Free material. There's a lot of people that are sold a false dream of streaming. They're like, "Oh, you can do it. You just need a chance to shine. You just need to believe in yourself." It's one of the reasons why I'm so pessimistic about it. Everybody out there is trying to encourage, and nobody's looking back and saying, "Hey, no, this is dangerous. Don't go down this path. It is going to hurt. It's going to cause problems. And if you do go down this path, here are some ways to help avoid some of the problems." I mention these things because there are people that want very desperately to succeed, and a lot of people that don't want to cause any sort of problems for them. They want to be encouraging. Now, all of us should want to encourage one another, but not to encourage people to do things that are destructive. That's bad. That puts their failure on your hands in many ways. Where is this? The system for finding this is different. So let's say that you have a dream of playing games? What are some of the areas that are still possible to do that? Because there are a couple. People are finding ways to make it work. But what are those people doing that is so different? Well, this is why the average person's never going to get there. Acting. You need to learn how to act if you're going to be able to make it. It is all fake. That's one of the reasons why I want to try and be as genuine as possible with these streams. I've mentioned this before, but it's been a while since I've really dove into this. Most people that stream are lying to you. They're deceiving you because they desperately want to be loved. They desperately want to be seen as, just a second, as important. So they learn to put on a face. I have worked with actors for many, many years. They all have the same struggles. They also have the same telltale signs of who they are. Another thing, they are outside of the world of streaming. They're actually very wealthy. I'm surprised at the people I've met in the streaming world. The ones that succeed, the ones that actually can make a living doing it, are not actually making their money from streaming. It is a losing venture for them. They are losing money left and right, but they will not tell you that. So if someone comes up and encourages you to try and get into streaming and to invest all this money into doing it, they are trying to ruin you, either intentionally or unintentionally. But it is something where it is happening. Some people believe beyond a shadow of a doubt that somebody needs them to stream. They don't need you to stream. No one needs me to stream, honestly. I do this for the sake of it. And as long as people find merit, then that's wonderful. But I'm not going to try and pretend like somehow I'm doing some revolutionary thing for society. That's not really the case. But if someone comes up and tells you to do that, and then you find out later on that they were actually incredibly wealthy, and that's how they were making their living, and then there you are, broken, financially unable to recover, and then you look at them and say, "You liars. You made me think that there was actually a chance. You never had that ability to make a living in this. You were just tearing other people down, putting them into a scenario that they were not going to be able to financially recover from." I saw that happening firsthand. There were people that I encountered that were financially broke, that couldn't leave. When I left, it was just at the point of no return. In fact, there is this image in my mind of Back to the Future. If you've seen Back to the Future, there is a moment in the third film, great film series, by the way, incredible, where Doc turns to Marty and says, there is one moment in this attempt to try and get themselves back to the future. They have to get the vehicle up to 88 miles per hour. But there's a problem. To get to that point, they're going to have to go on the only flat stretch of railroad that they can find. And there's a point of no return. It means they have enough time to slow the vehicle down and take it off and try again. Otherwise, they have to speed up and just go forward. And when they reach the point of no return, they make the tough decision to speed up and to leave one of them behind. The point of no return is just that. Someone is going to fail and someone's going to succeed. I went broke when I was working for the YouTubers. I had built up a substantial amount of cash in preparation for the future. And lo and behold, I ended up in a horrible situation because suddenly I was having to get financial help from relatives to try and recover. I went broke during that time frame. Now, no one cared from the YouTubers. Why would they? It wasn't their problem. Understandably so. But it was their problem in a way because there was an effort to try and push people down that path. They were intentionally trying to get people that were willing to give everything, to go down that path and have no guarantee of coming back. What I noticed with them is that to them, they're like, oh, financially in trouble? Just take out a loan. That sort of thing. You can't do that. Eventually, it's going to come back and bite you. So, So when I was in that position, I actually had folks that could help. It took me a while to pay them back off. But not a lot of people have that. So when they crash, they don't recover. Sometimes worse than that. So I'm not going to try and pretend like somehow you can be able to fight through it and find success, because in the end, no, you can't. There are some things that just will not pan out, and I would be evil if I were to say that you are just going to naturally overcome it. Because there's that secret that the people that are in there are actually wealthy, and they're not going to tell you that. So you'll be blindly trying to pursue something, not realizing the financial ruin you're setting yourself up for. And no one in the industry is going to tell you that, other than those that have been burned by it and say, hey, be careful, don't go down this path. Try telling that to somebody who is throwing everything that they got into streaming. I did not throw everything I got. The reason why I fell apart was because I was forced to pay for my travel, and I could not afford it. And so I had help from the person in charge to pay for my travel. Well, he didn't pay for it necessarily. He paid for part of it. The rest of it I had to pay for. And it was not cheap. And I looked at the amount that I was getting paid and realized dang, I'm in a financially horrible position. And I told relatives that. I was like, hey, just so you know, this job is probably going to fall apart very fast. And they watched and they gave advice, but in the end, they wanted me to try and pursue it. All the same, just because I saw potential with it. I saw merit that could be done. I didn't have anyone to warn me about how the YouTubers were going to behave, and how that, in the end, it was actually a very dangerous sort of situation to try and put yourself in. I didn't know. Now, could I have been smart and actually seen that coming? Yeah, absolutely. I could have been more intelligent. I could have been more observant of that. But I was also in the throes of trying to overcome the problems I mentioned about earlier, which was midlife crisis. When you're in that sort of position, you're like, well, I need to try something. So I was willing to give it a shot. To be able to say, yes, I'll give it a try. Even if it doesn't necessarily have signs of panning out. So I came to the end of that whole ordeal, and I was wiser for it. Not necessarily financially wiser for it, but you could say ethically wiser. I had to make some tough decisions. I had to be able to pull back and say, you know what? This is not good. This is hurting not just myself, but hurting others as well. And realizing that in order to try and help fix problems, I was going to have to leave problems. And so I took I made my gamble. Financially still hurt a whole lot. So all that to go back to the beginning of the story. There's not many streams that I will participate in, necessarily. I don't hunt out streams that are, that have open slots to be able to join in. I'm not opposed to it, but I'm not hunting for it. Not the way that some others are. That comes back to the realization that I had of that, well, there are going to be that there's a triviality that I don't want to have to bother with. There's another friend of mine. He is trying to become an influencer. Now, I like to think that I'm a bit of an influencer. I don't know how good of an influencer I am, but I am in that position of where technically, after the amount of time that I've been doing this, I technically would be considered, even though I'm not really, an influencer. Now, I like to instead think of myself as a bit of a digital, let's see here. I'm in the digital town square as a mentor. That's probably more true to what I am. I don't really do anything that is influencer based. I'm not trying to sell you a product other than, hey, get this wonderful Alaskan water. I could say that trying to eventually get to the point of being able to sell shirts could be considered being an influencer, but it's just trivial stuff. So I'm not technically an influencer. But I do know somebody that is trying desperately to become an influencer. He wants to be famous. He wants to feel like he has that he has something that makes him special. He wants to live in a fancy place one day. He wants to have name brands reaching out to him. But he's not going to be successful. Not because I'm trying to be cruel, but it's the reality. Very few people are going to get there. And the only people that will get there are those that have either money or have acting. Most likely the person who has both. It's kind of weird to revisit some of these images. To draw them again to draw them just period. To try and make an artistic memory of something that happened long ago. I would love to be able to reach out to the guy that kind of prompted this story to begin with. I thought about trying to convey to him like some of the dangers, but in the end, he would not understand. I could tell him in every way, shape, and form about the dangers of the path that he is on. it won't matter. It won't matter until he has felt the struggle and he starts to realize that he was lied to. I will not lie to people like that. But I don't know necessarily how to tell them off either. How do you go up to someone and say, stop, this is dangerous for you. You're not in a good position to try and do this. You're going to set yourself up for disappointment. You're going to set yourself up for failure. Again, I never intended to try and find success with streaming. The fact that I have anybody that watches is a positive. But I don't need it to be what defines me. I'm going to still be who I am. I'm going to talk in the same sort of manner. I'm going to be doing the same old dumb stories and conveying the same old life lessons. It wouldn't change. But there are many people that would change in a moment if it meant that they could get famous. So how do you tell people someone like that? How do you mention to them, hey, this is not going to end well for you? Without sounding like you're trying to be cruel. How do you do that? I don't know. And that's something I've never really been able to figure out. I don't know how to be a splash of cold water on someone. The only time that it has ever worked, that I've been able to tell somebody off and have it help them, is the heat of the moment and just having to be blunt with somebody. That's the only time that stuff has actually worked. But it's not something where I could say this is definitively how it works, because I don't know. It was a gamble, and not necessarily one that was guaranteed to pan out well. It very well could have made the situation worse. So I don't have that answer. Maybe I just need to be more blunt. But how do you convey that online when people can jump at to the slightest conclusions to the slightest negative idea? How dare you try and ruin my dream? This is my dream. Why should I have to give it up when you are obviously trying to do stuff with it? Best viewers? Ha! What have I just been telling this story for, you bot? Banned. Close one. Isn't that so stupid? Here I am talking about how meaningless the streaming world can be, and it's like, hey, we'll give you free viewers. Ha ha ha. I don't want that. I want genuineness. And you don't get that by trying to chase the trends. You know, a hard life lesson is very important. There was a life lesson I had that was painful to learn. but was very good to know. And it had to do with storytelling and some of the struggles that come with that space. Now, as most of you know, I am trying very desperately to try and get to the point where I can tell stories. To be able to tell meaningful stories that convey important messages, life lessons, things like that. I admit it, and I will continue to pursue it. But here's the problem. A couple of years back, someone told me point blank, your stories suck. We don't like them. We're bored by it. I had not told stories again until the other year, when I told the story of Snap and a Cane. It was the first time in a long, long time that I had told a story to anybody. It was because people hated the ones in the past. Well, didn't necessarily hate, but they made it obvious that they didn't like it. And they were very blunt with that. I would say a little too blunt, because it made me bottle up, and I didn't want to tell any stories ever again. So the only stories I had were written for myself. I still felt a compelling desire to want to share them with others, but I didn't have the stomach to do it. Now that's an example of somebody who came up and gave information that did help to improve my skills, because I ended up focusing so hard on trying to improve that I wasn't willing to share stuff until it was ready. But it also caused a lot of problems. It made me second guess myself to the point of where it became detrimental. Now, let's say, for example, somebody has an idea to stream games. I'm not a big fan of that. But what if somebody figured out a way to do it? And what if they were incredibly entertaining, but also had a sense of value and merit to what they did? I have no problem endorsing them. I have no problem encouraging them. But they have to be able to prove it. You can't just have somebody blindly tell you, oh yeah, you're going to succeed, and just expect that that's going to happen naturally. There's going to have to be effort. And kind of similar to the stuff that I had to struggle with, somebody is going to have to eventually be honest, and that person's going to have to learn how to overcome those hindrances. And if they can figure that out, then they will thrive. But if they can't, they are going to crash and burn, like so many others in the industry. It is a dying industry, and that's something else I wish people were more honest about. We really are not going to see any more game streams that are really going to be successful. It's all over. The techniques have been figured out. The gimmicks have been done. You'd have to get something completely different that no one has ever seen before. And I don't think that people know how to do that. If they do figure that out, then wonderful. But I don't think that they're going to. No, based upon the trends I've been seeing. going to go with a couple different techniques here. So I left the paper section on the previous one. I'm going to do this one with complete color just because I think scenery is a little different than having a subject in this sort of situation. Another thing is that there are some people out there that are convinced that they need to make games. And there are some good games out there that can be made, and I personally think that there's some fun games that I could make. But it doesn't really contribute a whole lot when you think about it. I've mentioned about this philosophy of cones and depressions. You're either contributing something of material value or you're not. You can add ideas to the culture, and that can be very beneficial. But it's not guaranteed to actually work out. But if you're offering something of material value, that takes physical labor, that is almost guaranteed to be successful. Doesn't really matter what it is, it will start to pan out. Art is more subjective, and especially something that doesn't have physical elements to it. Right now, the most valuable artwork that I've done is photos and some artwork that I painted, but it's stuff that appeared at an art gallery. I never sold anything, but the amount of material that went into it made it more valuable. So technically, it wasn't even my work that did anything. It was the fact that I had expensive frames. Well, not expensive frames, but frames, period. That's what made the value higher. But I didn't contribute anything, not necessarily. No one needs my photos. I'm saying that because it's true. Nobody needs what you have to offer. No one needs this piece of artwork that I'm doing. I do know that is the case. You have to be sober when you do this stuff, whether it's streaming, whether it's art, whether it's storytelling. You have to be sober and realize, you know what? People don't need this. But if you really want to do it because you see potential, not because you're trying to somehow game the system and be able to come out on top. You're not going to get anywhere. You have to do it because you believe in it. Then it doesn't matter if you succeed or fail, because you'll have done something that you believe is meaningful. And if you can do that, you're probably not going to have a midlife crisis. You're probably not going to have those panic attacks where you suddenly realize you haven't contributed anything. You need to find that stuff early on in life. And to think about it, because it will come back to haunt you otherwise if you don't. I've recovered from it. I know a lot of people who haven't. There was a guy that I actually mentioned this to a while back. He was a streamer. It's one of the reasons why I struggled with the guy that I saw recently that was doing this, that was streaming and not really thinking about the challenges and the consequences of kind of going down this path. So I mentioned it to somebody who was deep into this stuff. And he mentioned his struggles. And I was like, here's some ideas. Here's some ideas to be able to escape it. And he couldn't do it. He's like, I'm too deep. I'm too far into this to quit now. Over the coming weeks, he would have a series of panic attacks. He would have a realization that the people that he was working with hated him and didn't want him to be around. He had the realization that he wasn't going to be striking it big, even though he got a chance to do some pretty fancy things with some pretty sophisticated projects. A lot of fun stuff too, and it wasn't making him happy. Because in the end, he knew that the time was running short. A wise man looks at his time and says, I'm here for a very short amount of time. I'm going to do as much good as I can, because tomorrow might not come. And that's not a bad thing to think about. We're in our modern day, we're so panicked with this idea that we can't talk about negative things like that. But it only makes situations worse if we can't. It's one of the reasons why I call myself a bit of a sober streamer, because I want to try and wake people up to the realization that there's more. There's more to life. Sadly, most people in this world won't quite understand that until they've had to suffer in one way, shape, or form. And I take no delight in that. But I do know people that take delight in seeing people fail, that they feel have succeeded where they should have. I confess, I've had a little bit of that myself over time. But in the end, it's not beneficial to think that way. It's very destructive, actually. So, it is important to remember to avoid the bitterness, but also to realize that you need to be sober about this stuff, especially if you hope to go into it. You know what I would really like to do if I could do any type of stream? If I could go back and just snap my fingers and have a channel that was all set up, good to go, and be able to make it work regardless of what people mentioned, told me, or what other people were doing. I'd want to do a travel channel. That'd be a lot of fun. But it wouldn't have really the same... Mostly because it gives the opportunity to reach out to many people across the globe. It gives you a chance to talk about deep life lessons as you get to see things in the real world. But something else I would really like to do is philosophical and theological discussions. I watch that stuff all the time. I would very much like to do some of that myself. And I have on some streams. But it's not a staple of the channel. Be a lot of fun to do. But it also would bring in a lot of problems. And I do realize that. I'm not going to pretend that somehow it doesn't. Okay, save that. Now we're saving the third one. 3. Alright. Delete these. And bring in the next image. Nope, that's not how you do it. Let's see here. I forget how to do this. Import image. Scans. There we go. This one's going to take a little bit of touch-ups. This was the first drawing. It's interesting how the first drawings never turn out very well. I confess I've not been spending a whole lot of time practicing my art as much as I would like to, and so thus I come to projects like this and it just is about half of what you kind of want. Granted, I knew it wasn't going to be great because of the amount of time I was giving myself, but it still could have been so much better. But I also needed to practice on this because we're going to be returning to the art table. And so I needed to get my pencil and pen skills back up to speed. And this was a good opportunity to practice some of that while also preparing for the next stream of the Milo artwork, which will be done shortly. I needed the chance to get up to speed because going back to the art table would require a different set of skills than what is typically done on the tablet. And it does take me a couple of drawings to be able to change about my techniques. If you knew a friend who wanted to become a streamer, and they came up to you and said, "Hey, will you help me do this, and I'll help you kind of get in on the ground floor with this stuff," would you be all that excited to want to contribute? Someone wants to get fame and they're saying, "Hey, if you're basically kind to me, I'll let you tag along. Doesn't sound very kind, does it? I have been on the receiving end of that statement quite a few times, actually. And it's quite surprising, honestly, just how many people behave like that. People that are big-time streamers or small-time streamers, all saying the same sort of thing. Help me become successful and maybe I'll let you come along with me. It's not very ethical. And the world of the web is not too favorable to people that have ethics. And I like to focus primarily on the well-being of men and women. I want to make sure that they have a chance to succeed and also especially to find value and purpose. If you are going around and trying to pursue that fame and success, that's going to require you to many times compromise your values. And so thus, it's not very beneficial. So if your friend comes up and says, hey, I want to be able to do this, will you help me out? You have to ask yourself the question, is this best for my friend? And you might have to say no. And they're going to hate you for it. They're going to lash out. And you're going to say, well, you try and tell them, hey, you know, I'm not saying this because I want to be cruel to you. I'm saying this because I'm a bit concerned. Because the world of streaming is very hostile. And so then you tell them that, and they don't understand that. They think that somehow you're trying to treat them ill. And that's, honestly, for a lot of people, that's the furthest thing from the truth. They don't want to, well, good people don't want to hurt each other. But people who are selfish and desperate, they do want to hurt one another. That's why the bigger the streamer, many times the more cynical they are, because they know what it's like to have to deal with competition. Brand new people don't really know that. But so if you tell your friend that, they might cut you off from them. They'll go on and they'll try and find success, and then they'll come back around one day and they'll pretend like it never happened. Like, well, I had this interesting adventure, and hey, let's just forget about that and move on. It's like, hey, you do realize you threw me under the bus in the process, right? I mentioned about that because I've had that speech given to me several times from a variety of people. And there are some people out there that intentionally want to use you. So sometimes if they come along and they say, hey, you know, you're really good at the streaming, you should keep going, there's actually a very real possibility that they might not be telling you the truth. They might be saying that so they can try and benefit off of you. If not by like having you participate, by having you give them money. That's one of the reasons why I don't mention to people, hey, you know what? If you want to watch the streams, fine. I'm not going to gatekeep. And I keep saying that over and over again. Not because we've had to do that, but because I want to keep reiterating that, so that way people know, should, not likely, but should something happen, that I have set a precedence of how I want to proceed. That I have a set of values that I hold to, and I don't want to forget those. So I reiterate them so people can call me out. Now, granted, some people will call you out just for the sake of it because, you know, to them it's almost like a game, and they like to be able to see you get riled. But I do believe that there is evil if you are trying to exploit people for fame and glory. and trying to gatekeep and make money off of people just for being there, that's not very beneficial. Now, granted, yes, you do need to make revenue of some kind. And honestly, there are speakers throughout history where they would show up to a place and you would pay to listen to a speaker. I don't have a problem with that. There's nothing wrong with doing something like that. But and even Paul mentioned about that. The Apostle Paul mentioned about that as being fine to do. But I see the streaming world take that to such a degree where they treat you like somehow you're evil if you don't do it. And that's where it starts to leave the aspect of, hey, you're paying because you enjoy it, and it becomes you're paying because I'll make you feel bad and I'll hate you if you don't keep it up. You can't do that and expect people to care. So a lot of streamers, especially people that are insulting, they'll eventually burn out because they have hurt so many people in the process. And they have no remorse. Until they have to pay their dues. Then suddenly their tune changes, and then they try and act all so victimized, you could say. There's actually some streamers right now that are experiencing that. I feel sorry for them because they didn't know. I mean, granted, the warning signs were all there, but a lot of people don't realize their mistakes until it is too late. And the warning signs were there, but they didn't realize it because they didn't taste the pain until it was mounting. You could say that is how it should be. That people should be given the chance to make their mistakes only. Make their mistakes and then they get punishment eventually, and there should be no second chance for them. Some people actually do believe that. I like the idea of that, well, give them a warning sign. If they don't pay attention to the warning sign, ratchet it up a little bit. Take someone and go and talk to them. By the way, that is how disciples are supposed to behave. If somebody's messing up, we go and talk to them. We don't just immediately condemn them. We're supposed to go up and say, hey, I noticed that you're going in this certain route, and I think that you should avoid that. The streaming world doesn't permit you to do that. It is all about blindly building people up and then cutting them down in a moment. So a lot of famous streamers right now are kind of in that sort of predicament. Their words have come back to haunt them. And by the way, I don't care what anybody says. When someone says, hey, you have the freedom of speech to say anything, a lot of people have been using that to say horrible, horrible things. That's not good. Sure, you may have a freedom to do it, but eventually someone's going to have the freedom to sue you. And you're going to have to learn the hard way. Having control on a stream is very important. By the way, that's one of the reasons why I don't curse. Because I know how quickly that can devolve and make things worse. I don't curse in my normal life either, because I realize what a slippery slope that can be. Some people don't like to restrict their tongue, and those people will make terrible streamers. And I'm not joking when I say that those people are going to fail miserably. I've known people who feel like they can take on the world. They can say anything they want. with no repercussions. And then one day, they let slip something just a little too edgy. And suddenly, half of their fandom leaves. Or worse. Some people become vengeful, and suddenly they start lashing out. That has happened to quite a few people. It doesn't take a genius to know that. But it does seem to take a genius to know that you need to restrict your tongue. And if you can't control your tongue, you should not be a streamer. Sure, a lot of people are streamers and they do not restrict their tongue. Believe me when I say they will fail one day. They're going to regret that they did not control their tongue. But it doesn't sound cool. It doesn't sound like it doesn't make them happy. But it will destroy them. I have seen it happen. Now, some people get away with it. Those are the people that have money. But the people who have no money are the ones that are going to probably be hit the hardest, because they don't have the ability to bribe their way out. And the moment that they're in that position, heaven help them, because their fandom probably won't. Some people think that the way to avoid that stuff is to avoid things like religion and politics. I talk religion and politics all the time. I've not been canceled for it. Someone did try and cancel me on Facebook. It failed. But no one's canceled me on my streams for that. No one has lashed out in anger and said, "How dare you say this?" Because I try and approach things calmly, respectfully, and people are at least willing to listen. But if you go through life condemning and lashing out and taking joys you tear people apart verbally, they're not going to support you for very long. By the way, folks, if you find anything of merit on these streams, it'd be great if you would take the moment to like or dislike the stream. I accept both, because the main goal is to make sure that people are not bots. And if you like or dislike the stream, that means you're likely flesh and blood. And if you comment, that'd be great. No requirement, of course. It's just something that would be considerate. Not necessarily to try and promote the stream, because otherwise I'd be trying to buy promotion time. No, it's just mostly for my own well-being, of just knowing who's there and who's not. We've had a couple of streams where I realized that we have actually way more people watching than I thought. And you don't know that until after the fact, and you've looked at the likes, and then you look at the watch time, you're like, oh, there actually was somebody there. By the way, if you know a streamer that has been struggling to find success and hasn't considered this sort of stuff, consider asking them about some of that. Greetings, Gino. It is right here. This is a drawing for that's going to be for a stream tomorrow. By the way, how you doing? This is the third of 4 images that I'm just inking. It's nothing sophisticated. It's fairly simple sort of artwork for tonight, mostly because I'm going to be telling a story with it tomorrow, and I want to give some illustrations so people know what I'm talking about. About to head to bed. Understand. Well, make sure that you rest well, and hopefully it is nice and rejuvenating. Very relaxing. Much appreciated. Part of it is the fact that right now it's allergy season for me, so my voice is taking on a little bit of a deeper aspect for today. But either way, hopefully it lulls you to sleep and you can be able to rest and be able to take on tomorrow with all the energy that you get for this night. By the way, just a reminder for folks, this is going to be the stream that I'm going to be doing in which these images are going to be coming up is going to be on after the weekend. That is a YouTube channel. I've shared it on my social medias. It's going to be a talk about Bigfoot. And it's going to be I'm going to be bringing a very logical sort of approach to it. And so, for those that have heard the stories before, you're going to hear them again, but with a slightly different focus. So that way it is something different. Because I have told the stories 3 times at this point. And so tomorrow we're going to be having the illustrations as well as covering some of the logic to help bring a critical sort of approach to this, to be able to find where the truth is and where the myth is. There's a couple of artists out there that do this sort of stuff really, really well. I'm not one of them. It takes me a long time to do my artwork. A lot of challenges for me. But if I was to do it every single day, I would get better. And that's something that I really have not been doing effectively. I need to do art every single day. If I could, I'm sure that this stuff would turn out beautifully. But right now it kind of looks like someone in their early teens probably drew it. Somebody who's not been practicing a whole lot. Which, by the way, brings up a point. Have you had a skill that you look at what you've done and think, dang, I could do better than that. Why did it turn out so bad? That can be incredibly discouraging. But here's the thing. Some people are going to find a task really easy, and it will feel like it's putting you to shame. I have felt that before. I've looked at other people's artwork and think, dang, if only I could draw that good. If only I could do things that fast. But at the same time, that is also a way that you can become so discouraged that you won't try and improve. You'll just call it quits. Especially with the world of AI right now, there's a lot of people getting discouraged. But here's the thing. Your skills are not going to stay the way that they currently are. They're going to improve. And the more effort you put into it, the more success you'll see. If I was to draw every single day for an hour, I would become a pro artist after about probably 2-3 months. Mostly because I'm getting older and I can feel myself taking longer to try and master something than what I used to be able to do. But there are some things that you can still learn well into your later years. Now, I'm just in my 30s. I still have quite a bit of flexibility in my brain. But there's people that are in their 40s that have never drawn before that suddenly become a master with just a little practice. How is that possible? Because we all have a set of skills that can be mastered. And once those skills are mastered, we have the ability to use them in an artistic form. Some people are going to be really good at calligraphy. Other people are going to be really good at carving. Others are going to be good at pen and paper. All of our skills can be artistic. So it doesn't matter where our art skills are to begin with. It matters whether or not we've mastered a tool that we're going to be able to utilize one day. In that note, I need to improve my artistic skills because my pen and paper skills could get there. I just need to, extra practice. All right, let me check something here. So tomorrow, with the stream, it's going to be taking place at, I believe it's 10:30 at night on East Coast time. So that's going to be 6:30 for me. Typically, I'm the late night streamer, and so for me, that's pretty early in the evening to have to do something like that. The fact that I am basically going to be having dinner just before doing that stream. One of the things I try and convey this each time I tell these stories, but these are things that I completely believe happened. And I have to convey that because there are some people in this world that are convinced that none of this stuff is real. There is no such thing as large creatures in the wilderness. There's no such thing as large creatures in the ocean. But I'm here to say that there is something there. But it's not the monster that people want you to think. But it's still dangerous. Dang, got a bit of a sliver there. So, if you were to go back and go back into time and tell somebody that you saw something large, hairy, and wild in the wilderness, there's a lot of people throughout the ages that would have believed you. But in our modern day, we tend to not like to think about that because that gets a little unnerving. We don't like the idea that there are mysteries, and we don't like the idea that they could be dangerous. It doesn't make those stories any less true. If anything, it means that we need to be more cautious. And our ancestors were far more cautious, all the way up until about 150 years ago, when we started to think that the world was tame and there is nothing else to be concerned about. And that's, in some ways, it's true. There's not a whole lot to have to be worried about. But there still are things that you have to be wary about. And that's where my approach is a little different than some other folks. I have seen the dangers that can happen in the wilderness. But it doesn't mean that they are evil and awful. But it does mean that we need to be on our guard and to treat things like they can be dangerous. You don't go and sleep in a lion's cage. Well, unless you're Daniel, then you can be able to be in the lion's den and be perfectly fine. Now, the thing you have to be wary about is that a carnivore is going to be a carnivore. If you put yourself in a proximity position to where that carnivore has the instinct to want to attack, you're probably not going to be very wise if you put yourself into that creature's cage, or go into the place where it lives. Again, that's the tease, and so if you want to hear the whole story, again, after the weekend is where that's going to be. Speaking of which, I better post that here, because that is going to be where people can see it in the future. Okay, let's see here. Sharing that, so that way, if anybody on any of the platforms wants to be able to see that, you can be able to save that so you can tune in tomorrow. And if no one shows up, that's perfectly fine. But just a reminder, that is somebody else's stream, and so I do want them to at least still, find success. If no one wants to hear my portion of it, that's perfectly fine. But if you want to hear the other stuff that they have to say, I think it would mean a lot to them if you showed up for that. Again, I've told my stories multiple times over, so it's not like people around here have to have that, have to tune in just to hear the same stories again. By the way, if you want to hear other stories, there's another one that's going to be coming out, and this is one of my own creation. It's called Pharaoh and the Smith. It's a short story, and it's right in the process of getting edited. I'm going to have someone try and read it just to make sure that it is properly worded, but there's not any glaring errors with it, and then it's going to be published. It'll be on the Castercraft website, and there will be a pamphlet as well for those that want to have a printed copy of it, but I do realize that there's not... I don't have a whole lot of funds to be able to try and make it a true publication, so this is like my experiment publication. It's designed to learn the process. Have you ever been in a position where you get where you find yourself in need of encouragement, and there's no one around really to give that encouragement? What are some strategies that you've used in the past that can kind of help you to press on? It's a little bit of a tough challenge, I would dare say. There's a lot of things in this world that can get discouraging. And sometimes the ability to try and overcome it is going to elude us. And it can get very disheartening. So what do you do in a sort of position like that? You're discouraged. You need someone to give you some guidance, some motivation. Well, for a lot of people, they will turn to the Bible to try and find that encouragement. But for some folks, that can still be a bit of an overwhelming thing, because it can give encouragement. It can also, honestly, there can be times where it can be very discouraging. If you turn to the wrong area and you kind of get trapped there. But here's the thing. It's a good place to start. And I'm not just saying that because of the... I'm not just saying that because it's like because it's like helped out every single person in the world that has done that, because some people, like I said, can get discouraged. But what it is a starting place. Turning to Psalms is actually a very easy way to start finding encouragement. And I mentioned about that because there are quite a few people in our world that do get wildly discouraged, and they don't know how to break free. One guy that I knew would play a musical instrument whenever he wanted to try and reset his mind and to start to find some optimism again. And while that can be encouraging, while they can lift your spirits a little bit, it's not really the encouragement that
many of us need. Well, one of the important things to remember is that we are made to be social creatures. We are made with a need to be around one another. One of the best ways to find encouragement is to be involved with others. Sometimes we can become so consumed with our own struggles that we start to become cynically minded. We start to become overly self-focused and thus get discouraged. When we are around others, when we are either volunteering or we are just spending time in other people's presence, what we start to do is we start to see other people's lives as being just as important. Now, not everyone's going to see that, and I have known a couple of people where that wouldn't help them at all, but those people, they got other things that they're having to deal with. The easiest way to be able to start to find some encouragement again is to try and encourage others. That is something that I have seen play out, and I didn't really think that that was possible initially. I thought that was a little silly to think about until I saw it in action. See, it's very easy to be able to look at our own circumstances and just get overwhelmed by it. But the moment we start looking at another person to try and encourage them, what we're doing, in essence, is saying somebody else is in a tough position, and you're starting to see ways to help them by encouraging. And then when you get a chance to kind of look back in the mirror, you're like, wait a minute, I'm in the exact same boat as someone else. And it starts to lighten your load. You see somebody else that is dealing with things. And by encouraging someone else, you're also starting to realize, you know what, there is hope at the end of the tunnel. There's some people I know where they just get discouraged and they just bottle up. And they're like, nope, I'm waiting for someone else to come along and change my life, to make things all better. And they're going to be waiting a long, long time because they cut themselves off. And that's very bad. Very destructive. You mustn't let yourself be cut off, because that's when your own mind starts to eat at you and makes things worse. There was a guy, he was a streamer from some while back. I've mentioned this guy's story before, but this does bring up his story, and kind of needs to be refreshed in our minds. He was very discouraged, and he didn't know how to kind of break free. In his grief, he started turning to substance abuse, and it became a downward spiral for him. Every day he got worse, to the point of where he started becoming borderline mad. And he could have avoided all of that if he did something so simple as go out and engage people face to face. Would have been so very simple. because there were those of us who were willing to reach out to him. But he had become so closed off from everybody else that felt impossible to him. If he had just reached out, he would have been welcomed. And in fact, I did get a chance to try and help out. And I do say try because he was so far gone at that point. He didn't want help. And so my attempt to try and assist did not quite pan out the way I wanted it to. I learned very quickly the kind of the cold nature of the streaming world after that, because I realized how many people were willing to delight in somebody's pain and suffering. And I didn't want to become like that. I wanted to try and avoid that like the plague. Because I thought, when I saw him, I thought, what if that was me? In the end, the guy has never recovered. He's still dealing with the consequences of his choices, and he doesn't have any way out. And I can't help but wonder what could have been done to try and help him when he had closed himself off. There are many people in this world right now that are closing themselves off from everyone else. I'm guilty of that myself. I go down to my coffee shop, for example. I work on projects, and I close myself off to others. I'm not communicating with them. Not a whole lot, although there are a couple times where I try and engage, but I always try and keep an ear open. So if there is an opportunity to engage someone, I have that opportunity. There are some people that they will put in earbuds and they will zone out. You pass by and they look away. They just will not face you. Those people are really hard to help. It's not impossible, it's just really, really hard. Because they're so used to cutting people off from themselves that when you do try and reach out, it feels foreign to them, and they recoil. Our society has encouraged one another to remain in isolation. You're a bad person if you reach out. And yes, that has been the message for the last couple of decades. It's been getting worse. But we have a chance to be able to help reverse that. To be able to look at one another and say, hey, I recognize that so-and-so is not looking so good. Wonder what's going on. To be able to stay engaged. But you can't stay engaged if someone's not around. That's why it's important to not isolate. It's unfortunate that there are some people in our society that want desperately, more than anything, to be able to chat with other people. But we don't even know where to start at times. I saw someone the other day that was very much in this category. They showed up to an event, and they got on their phone, and that was it. That was all they ever did that entire event. How long have you been streaming for? Now, that is a very good question. I've actually been streaming a fair amount of time at this point. Technically, it's around 3 years. It's officially around 2.5. So I'm right at that cutoff point where most streamers get off. And I've tried to try and change direction, so thus things have kind of been rekindled. One of the things that took place with that was originally I was doing streams with other people, and I didn't actually start taking up my own streams until after I was doing experiments to be able to help improve some streaming techniques for someone else. And I was experimenting, and so I went live just to experiment, and suddenly I got a whole bunch of people that showed up. It was because they had seen that I actually had an account, and they saw I went live, and then they suddenly all showed up. We don't nearly have those numbers that I used to get from back then, but that's not the goal. The goal is to try and do things that are creative, and regardless of the audience numbers, that has been my main focus. And so, but that was how things all got started. We had someone by the name of Jess who was a regular around here. I think that life circumstances have changed, and so she's not been around for a while. But she was the one that really got things started, because I wasn't interested in wanting to go with anything, and suddenly, lo and behold, she started sharing the news, and suddenly it got inundated with all sorts of people. It's been quite the ride, honestly. I've learned a whole lot in this adventure. It's also not something I ever would have done if people had not basically pushed me into it. Which goes to show, sometimes friends can change your life in many, many ways, including push you into something that takes hundreds of hours of your time and into something that you never would have tried. I am very grateful for those folks. They did a lot to kind of change my mindset. It also helped me to understand the good that could happen. There's a lot of good that can happen in the streaming world. But I confess it can get it can get a bit problematic at times. But I used to become very cynical about the streaming world, and then lo and behold, I became one. It's kind of interesting. You can look down on something for a long time and think ill of a group of people. And then God comes along, plucks you up, puts you in the middle of them and says, okay, now you're one of them. How does it feel? And suddenly you get a whole different perspective. That happened to me a couple of years back as well with the world of theater. I used to look down on people from the theater. And I learned by working backstage at a theater some of the things they have to deal with. And they suddenly had my sympathy in many ways. I understood their story to the point of where I understood their story to the point of where I no longer looked down on them. I looked at them as regular human beings and had a desire to want to see them thrive. I dare say, a lot of us can go through life with prejudices like that, and we learn over time to finally break free of that. Okay, gotta switch this around. This is the last drawing that I have to do for the stream for tomorrow. This one right here is actually a map of one of the events, so it should be interesting. You know, I remember the day that I sent out an email. It was a very weird email for me to send out. But like I was mentioning at the start of the stream, a couple of years back, I was I had a pretty severe case of midlife crisis. And so I sent an email out offering to volunteer for a single task with a group of streamers. They were looking for a tool, and I said, hey, I can help you build that tool. That was it. And that act of just wanting to volunteer suddenly transformed everything. And it gave me a completely new direction as a result of that. But it put me in proximity with the streaming world for the first time. Sometimes you do something and you learn about it later on that was exactly what you were supposed to do. I was providentially I do believe providentially I was put into the streaming world. I was also providentially removed from it for a time. I'm back for right now. I don't know what the future will hold. Hopefully, it will involve a bit of storytelling, but that is yet to be seen. And based upon how this summer goes, that may be a very short-lived sort of dream. We will see. By the way, for those that have been watching streaming for a fair amount of time, what are some of the things that stand out to you in this sort of an industry? What draws you to it? Is it the excitement? Is it the constant sound in the background? Is it the community building aspects? Is it kind of the personal approach that people have to a variety of life activities? What is the thing that draws you to it? I've asked that question a couple of times over the last few years. It always amazes me the sort of responses that we've gotten, because they're all over the place. And they keep growing, honestly. Alright, so this one should be a relatively easy drawing to do. Alteration to do here. Here, let's get the proper coloring for this. By the way, this is a map of a place in Idaho. This is where tomorrow you will hear about this story. But I remember this place very, very well. lot of very interesting things took place here, of which is the story that is going to be told tomorrow. I don't usually watch streams. I never like the big streamers who are always mired in controversy. I can definitely understand that. Sometimes I go through the Blender or programming tag to watch smaller streamers, though. Blender is a great program. I have a lot of fun with that. But yeah, I can respect that. Having been in the circle of people that are bigger streamers, I can say you are absolutely right about the controversy. Sometimes the controversy is way worse than people realize. I just realized I don't want to do that in that way. I want to have it like this. Here we go. Another layer, so that way it makes it easier to be able to subtract. There we go. One also can't brush off controversy. I had to try and be blunt with a big-time streamer who will remain nameless. He was, he was very upset with a decision that I kind of butted into. I wasn't apologizing for it, and it made him very frustrated. He got very accusatory and started, and finally is like, nope, that's it. I don't want to be around you anymore. It's kind of interesting. I sent him a letter that kind of said the same thing. But we both had it for different reasons. He had it because he felt slighted. My problem was that we had a controversy that was not being dealt with. And I viewed it as important that we address the problem rather than try and conceal it. Interestingly enough, sometimes you're proven right, but you don't get a chance to see it. I was proven right over time, but I didn't get the vindication for it. And it was very frustrating because a lot was lost in that whole ordeal. I lost friends, I lost opportunity, all because somebody didn't want to hear that there was a problem. Sometimes you go through life like that. You have to make a stand, and nobody's going to be able to vindicate you. You're going to come away from it, and you're going to say, well, what was the point of that? The point is that you make a difference, regardless. Whether you are praised or whether you are ridiculed, you are supposed to do what you can to help another, even if it's never fully appreciated. It's really hard for a person who is in the streaming world to have to deal with controversy. I dare say, there's a point where a streamer becomes so big that to even acknowledge a controversy makes it look like they're weak, and that's when their ridicule seems to just naturally grow. Well, one of the things that I found intriguing about some people with controversy is that you'll always have somebody who is bitter as a result. And I met one of those people who was bitter and heard that there was a controversy and made it worse. intentionally trying to get someone to react in a terrible, terrible way. Well, he was successful. He got people to react in a horrible way, and people lashed out. As a result, a lot of people got hurt. And the guy was confronted later on. He basically just laughed. He got what he wanted. He got a reaction. The bigger the stream, the more somebody's going to want to try and react, to get a reaction. It's it's kind of a problem because in many ways it's a gamer issue. Because many people, if they spend all their time, and I'm not saying this happens for most people, the very small number of people do this, there are some people that view the world as a game. And to get someone to do something bad, or to get in trouble, or to lose something, or to have controversy, is a form of achievement. Well, I met one of these people. A very sadistic sort of man, honestly. And I didn't know that this is how people could be until I met this guy. And even so, I didn't understand until the damage was already done. And I was like, never, ever would have thought that somebody would be so cold and heartless as that. Well, he also destroyed a whole lot of people's relationships. He had one, and what was his response? A smirk and a laugh. He spent months forming relationships just to tear him down so he could get a chuckle out of it. And then he didn't care. He moved on, found another friend to try and do that to. It's important to try and pursue wisdom. The online world doesn't favor that a whole lot, sadly, but I think that it's important all the more in recent years. There's a lot of people in this world that want very much to feel valued. The online world has not been very good for that. And especially when we have folks that do view the world as a game, then you get hurt by it. People like that, sadly, are everywhere. But if we were to use wisdom and kindness, a lot of us would avoid a lot of those problems that can occur from such folks. But it's not a guaranteed sort of way to avoid it. You never know until it's a little too late. Let's see here. So, with some of the bigger streamers, a lot of them will get cold to other folks. They'll start to view everyone else as out to get them. So not only do some people become kind of cynically minded and think, hey, I can get at people and get under their skin in ways like that, some people actually start to think that, well, I can, that means I don't have to care about anyone. And that was part of the problem I had with the streamers of the past. They got so cold that they didn't care about anybody. And as a result, people became hateful and discouraged. And to the point of where they were reaching out saying, hey, we don't like what's happening. Didn't change anything. Because you care about somebody doesn't mean you're weak. But in the streaming world, it does feel like that at times. In fact, I remember hearing that, hey, you need to... I heard a guy being told, you need to toughen up your skin. And then they proceeded to try and tear him down, to humiliate him publicly. He did not sign up for that. And so he went from excited to get a chance to share stuff on stream to suddenly never wanting to come back. And as I understand, he never did. That was the last time I ever saw him on those streams. When you're online, it can become easy to look at someone and say, you're just a series of pixels on a screen. It's also just as easy to look at somebody and say, you're just a series of text on a screen. Being able to look beyond that and see the person behind that is a life skill that many of us never learned. And if we can figure that out, we will help to solve the problems of this world. We are too disconnected. We're too lonely. We're too isolated. In many ways, it's just because we're disconnected. And if we could be able to look at the screen and say, that is someone of flesh and blood who has value and merit, I think we could start to turn the tide on how our culture's going. It actually goes back to the heart of something I mentioned to some folks a while back. I think that the way that you change a situation is not necessarily from the top down, it's from the roots up. What do I mean by that? Let's say that your community has a homeless problem, which, by the way, Alaska has a homeless problem. A lot of times you can think, hey, I just want to vote someone in to solve the problem. A top-down approach. In reality, as I've been seeing over the years, it seems to me that everything is solved from the roots up. It's not what someone else can do to change it. It's what you and your very small circle of people around you can do. If you can change something just a little bit in your own community, it has much further reach than anything that someone else can do. It's taking ownership of the challenges. It's taking a hard look at a situation and saying, you know what? The buck stops not with someone else, but stops with me. In streaming, one of the things that happens is people are very quick to want to point fingers, to get all bent out of shape, to rage, sometimes get violent. And then they all want to point fingers at each other and blame each other and say someone else needs to change something. Someone else at the top needs to change things. And they can be able to change things just by themselves. Kind of like with the streamer that I mentioned about earlier, who just needed a friend. Wait a minute. Huh. That's weird. Anyway, I can feel myself starting to ramble, so my apologies, folks. There's some times where I can start to feel myself slipping, and I've started feeling myself slipping for the last couple of minutes. It happens. There we go. So we got this image almost done. Just want to do some color changes, then I'm going to show a little bit of a map here. Actually, wait a minute, there's something else I want to do with this too. Okay, we'll keep pressing on for a little bit longer here. There's a guy that I know. He's a good fella. But he's incredibly awkward. It's kind of funny because he's actually a guy that I never would have considered being a friend. He was kooky. We'll put it that way. He was kooky, and we didn't agree on anything. I joke that it was like 95% of things we disagreed on. But he was one of the only guys that I could actually disagree with, and for whatever reason, had nothing but respect for him. It was a weird sort of experience to have somebody that I disagreed with, but wanted nothing but the best for him. How many of us are just looking for somebody that is basically our mirror image, that we don't have to have challenge us or differ from us in any way, shape, or form? I used to think that, and thankfully, I've had a lot of experience over the years having to face the very people I disagree with. And it's almost like God was saying, I'm going to put these people in your life just so you don't become arrogant. And I gotta say, it was quite incredible to kind of experience those sorts of things. Some very fascinating people I got to meet over the years. One of them being this guy. A guy that, again, I disagreed with on just about everything, but yet for whatever reason, we were good friends. If you were to have somebody that you disagree with, would you say, you know what, it doesn't matter, they're a loser because they think this or think that? Would you just immediately write someone off? And if so, why? What would prompt you to want to write someone off blindly? Is that somehow going to be beneficial for somebody? Is it beneficial for you? Much appreciated there. Much appreciated, Gino. Hopefully you find something of merit over the time that you spend around here. Turning in for the night, much appreciated for your time. Rest well, and we'll see you next time, whenever that is. Again, much appreciated for the follow. So many times we want somebody that thinks just like us. But last I checked, growth doesn't happen from somebody who is just like us. Growth happens when we're challenged on something. They did an experiment where they put trees inside of a greenhouse. And they wanted to see if they could grow trees on Mars. And so they put them in the greenhouse and they just let them be. They had all the water in the world. They had great sunlight. They were well cared for and pruned and whatnot. And they died. And it had the researchers baffled. Like, how did this happen? The trees just started to droop and suddenly they just crashed and died. How? Well, see, they accounted for everything but struggle. See, a tree, when it grows, it is fighting against the wind. When it fights against the wind, it actually grows stronger. Without the wind, a tree breaks. But wait a minute, the wind can blow the tree over. Yes. But it's needed for the strength of the tree to come about. You need something that causes it to sway. If everyone you have around you doesn't cause you to stretch, it's not making you stronger. You don't necessarily have to be blown over by it, but it needs to impact you so you can become stronger over time. Don't just blindly agree with people, but listen to them and experience what they have, because you never know, that might be actually a way that you're being prepared for the future. Anyways, that's something that I found fascinating and something I thought about when I was around that guy, around that fella that I disagreed with. He had some good points, and you know what? I don't agree with, I still don't agree with most of what he has. But the one difference is that we didn't hate each other for those differences. And that's very important. That's better. Now this one's going to have a couple of different frames that gets saved here, so I got to remember to do that. Okay, let's ask out the trailer and the van. Oh, let's see. There we go. I've been wanting to do this drawing for a long, long time. For whatever reason, it was very difficult to kind of pull myself to sit down and do it. It's run through my mind countless times. And each time I was like, I need to do this drawing. It's not even a sophisticated drawing. Not technically. but it was very difficult to pull myself to actually to do this. And so I'm grateful to, after the weekend, for kind of prompting the need for this. One more layer of detail for this. One that's over top of these, and this is the deep shadow. Pull that back just a little bit. There we go. Hopefully this comes across clearly during the stream tomorrow. It's been a fun project to work on because honestly a lot of these different things are going to come into play for some of the Milo stuff, if there's any sort of real illustrations that take place. Which, by the way, that is a project that is in the works, and that is one that I really look forward to sharing. I've been thinking about it for a long time. I'm trying to get the writing just perfect for it. And that should be coming out later on this year, hopefully. God willing. But I do realize things like that are not guaranteed. They happen. And sometimes they pan out just as you want, and other times they do not. But one thing I have learned about this whole process is that there are some good ideas out there worth exploring. You don't necessarily know how far you should pursue it until you finally put pen to paper. You know, so to speak. But it kind of started last year. I finally sat down and was like, okay, someone made the redeem for this. I need to try and do good on this. And it sparked a lot of different ideas that got more and more complex as time went on. It went from being a 4-page project to suddenly being an entire novel. And I really, really look forward to sharing that, because I think it has a really compelling message. But what I've learned is that just because it has a compelling message that you get passionate about doesn't mean that it's going to just roll off the tongue. And that is what I've had to learn the hard way. So once we get this base layer down, I'm going to save this as a couple different files. And each one's going to have a slight alteration, and you'll see why. Okay. Lovely. Lovely. And honestly, I don't think I need any other colors for that. All right. You know, before we do that, I'll be right back. Gonna get myself a little bit more to drink. And I'm back. Stream ended up being way longer than I was expecting. I got too engrossed in the storytelling as well as doing this. Probably for the best. Alright, I might as well wrap things up here. The artwork's done. It's now just export problems. So, anyway, we're going to wrap it up for there. There's no need for raids because right now we don't have anybody across the raidable areas. If you have found anything of merit during this, will you please consider liking, or if you didn't like it, dislike it. At least it meant you're flesh and blood. Have a very pleasant evening and morning, everybody. Be civil to one another. And we will see you next time. Hopefully tomorrow over at after the weekend, which is happening during the weekend, which is kind of ironic. Anyway, have a very pleasant evening, everyone.